Hey guys, and welcome back to the BSofSociety. So let's talk about Azur. So the combat is basically like another 2D combat, just like most other gacha games. Um, Basically, it's one of like those bullet dodger type of games where you basically shoot bullets at your enemies and then you dodge the enemy's bullets. But it's not as difficult as like, oh, you get hit once and you're dead. No, your ships basically just take damage the more you get hit. And a lot of bosses and stuff, you really can't dodge their bullets, but you try to dodge as much as you can, um, while still hitting your enemies. So there are three different types of weapons. You obviously have your torpedoes, because this is a ship game, right? So you have your torpedoes, and then your back line will usually have your barrages and your airstrikes. Um, I think when you get better units, your back line is the one that deals the most damage. But there are some units in the front line that can also deal a lot of damage as well. Um, or at least I'm just guessing, but I'm assuming that there are some frontline units that are really good at that. So, and then you have another set of units that are your submarines, but they are kind of used a little bit differently. So, for each stage, you basically have like a map, kind of like you do for Girls Front Line, and then you have a bunch of units that you basically go into battle with. Um, Now, when you use submarines, your normal fleet can basically just move around that as much as they want until they get hit by an ambush, or an airstrike, and then they'll take damage from airstrikes, and you basically either have to fight the ambush or try to evade it. But if you fail to evade it, then you have to fight, right? Um, but submarines, they basically spawn like somewhere on the map, and then they have an area that they patrol. Now, if you have them in attack mode, they'll, go towards enemy units that are in their patrol area and basically deal 20% of the enemy's health. So basically, every enemy within that stage, or within that attack area, not the attack area, but yeah, every enemy that you end up fighting on that enemy node or whatever will basically have 20% less health. So it can be very helpful. Now, your submarines can only do that once, so you can't decrease them to like 60 or 40. But just decreasing that 20% can help. Now, you can't do that to bosses. Now, the other thing is if you attack an enemy that's within the search area of um, your submarines will be callable. Now, when you call in your submarines, you can't really control them, but they will send out like an initial barrage. And I think some submarines will continuously send out a barrage of torpedoes. And you deal massive damage, and it's basically your nuke button. When your submarines are strong enough, it's basically your nuke button. And I really like them over how ferries are used in Girls Front Line. You know, because you can just call them whenever they're there. Not only that, but you can also move them around. Now, moving them around does cost a resource that I'll get to in a minute. But, and calling them in also uses the same resource. But at the same time, it's better than having to wait for a ferry command because, oh, sorry, let's just make something new just to make something new so that way you have to wait for it. Yeah, no, you can just use your submarines all day. Now there are certain maps that you can't deploy submarines on, but the maps that you can, they're highly versatile and highly useful. Um, Now the currency that I was talking about, it's called oil, and it's basically your stamina of Azur. Whenever you start a battle, you usually have to use about 10. And then whenever you use a fleet in battle, your oil cost is basically determined based off the ship's cost. Like each individual ship, it's basically based on their cost added together. So, like my current submarine fleet, whenever I call them in, I'm using 2 oil per unit. So that is 6 oil, right? My main fleet is currently 13 oil because I'm only using 2 ships. Um, Now, what most people will tell you is to not limit break your ships, because when you limit break them, you increase the cost of your oil for that ship. So it's best to level your ship up to 70 and then limit break them. Like only limit break them once, and that's if you're going to actually level them up to 120. And if you're like me, where you want to max out all your ships, that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to level them up to 70, and then I'll limit break them, right? Now, the limit breaks are basically 70, 80, 90, and then once you get to 100, there's like a second type of basically limit break. It's called awakening, and that doesn't raise the cost of your oil. Or at least it doesn't to my knowledge. Um, Mostly because once you get to level 100, you basically start storing XP anyways. So, yeah. Um, but with the use of this oil, you can basically move around your submarines. Now, when you move around your submarines, at least for my sub fleet, I don't know if it's different based on like the amount of units you have in your fleet, but my submarine fleet has 3 units, and basically every single time I move them, like when I move them the first tile, it costs 4. The second tile, it costs 7. The third tile, it costs 10. And then it's basically the same multiples going up. So, 14, 17, 20. Now, I don't know why the first, fourth, seventh, 10th, so on cost like that extra oil, but it's whatever. Right? Um, but being able to use your oil to move your subs instead of having to wait for a ferry command to recharge is nice. You don't have like a submarine command that's separate from everything else that you have to wait to recharge. I still don't understand why they did that in Girls Frontline. But now one thing I really do wish is that they could, even if they increase the oil cost, if you could like expand the area in which your submarines search instead of just moving them. Even if you like doubled or tripled the oil cost, that would be pretty dope, because what happens a lot of the times is your submarine like search area will kind of be weird, because it's kind of um like Fire Emblem. You know how like when you move around a corner, you have like a little less movement space? That's basically how it works. That's basically how the tiles on this little map area kind of works. Because some maps, you basically can only move like a certain amount of space before you have to stop. But that's basically how the submarine fleet works as well. And I really wish sometimes I could just like expand them like one more square instead of having to entirely move them, just so that way I can fight an enemy to level them up. That's basically like my one gripe with submarines, is that sometimes their search area is a little wonky. But hey, they're not fairies, so yeah. Now, the general gacha system of Azur Lane is kind of similar to Girls Frontline in a way, because you do have your wisdom cubes, which are basically your gacha tickets, and you usually use one or two. Most of the time, it's two. Um, but then you also have to use your coins, which is basically your main currency. Kind of like Mora and Genshin. Imagine if you had to use like 10,000 Mora to do a gacha pull in Genshin. Right, that's basically how it is in Azur Lane. You have to use like 1,500 coins, which you don't get a lot of at the beginning. I think your cap at the beginning is like, what, 10,000 maybe? My cap is currently like 40,000. Eventually, your cap goes up to like almost 100,000, which then you're basically golden no matter what. And then you have your quick production tickets, which you have to have, or else you have to wait. So being able to do pulls consistently is going to cost you a lot of money. And this is where we get into gems. Now, gems kind of have similar uses as they do in Girls Frontline. You have your dock space, you're paying for gacha currency coins, quick production tickets, all that. And then you can also expand your dorms so we have more space to get XP, to increase your ship morale, whatever. I think you can increase skill training slots, basically all of that kind of stuff. Um, Now you don't get a lot of gems at all, really. At the beginning, you don't really get much. But if maintenance goes over too far, I think is usually when you get gems. You get like 100 or 200. And you figure, just like Girls Run Line, I think maintenance is pretty much every week. So, it's kind of nice when that happens. Not only that, but outfits are priced pretty cheaply. So, they cost gems. So even free to play players can once again, just like in Arknights, because the same publisher. I believe Yostar is a publisher. You had the same people that published Arknights publishing Azur. Guess what? Both of them are indeed entirely free to play. Not just, oh yeah, it's free to play, but you still have to buy outfits. No, you can get all of the outfits for free. It's nice. You can even get all of the units for free. I like that, Yostar. And I see why people like Azur so much. Not counting the artwork. But, just in terms of general care for the consumers, it's nice. Even if sometimes you might put out banners too much, like what's going on with Arknights, everything's free to play. Why can't we get this in every gacha game? I want to get into the guild system and, the affection system and all that, but I'm running out of time on this video, so I think I'll cover all that in the next video. Later.